Welcome to Natu Reads, an audio library of revolutionary texts. Scripting the Change. Selected writings of Anuradha Ghandy. Can revolution be prevented by blocking the roads to Kamalapur? Kamalapur, a small village of 1,500 people in Gadchiroli forests, is now known not only all over Maharashtra, but also across the country. This village has become a symbol of the forest dwellers movement, organized under the leadership of the Marxist-Leninist movement. The first conference of the Adivasi Retu Kuli Sangatan was scheduled to take place in Kamalapur, and thus the movement in the forest areas became open. The government of Maharashtra was shocked at realizing the fact that the Adivasis in remote areas were becoming conscious and taking the path of struggle. News of the conference spread not only to Aheri, Etapalli, and Sironcha talukas, but also to the surrounding talukas and districts. Adivasi peasants from Rajura taluka also wanted to attend the conference. About 1,500 Adivasis from Bastar came to participate in the conference. Students and intellectuals from various towns in Vidarbha decided to stay in Kamalapur on 25 to 26 February, the conference days. Several days ahead of it, people in the three talukas left their own work and began making efforts to hold the conference. Donations of quintals of rice, vegetables, and hundreds of rupees were collected. Many cartloads of wood were brought for the construction of the dais and a hall that could accommodate thousands of people for 2 days. Adivasis, united in the course of struggles in their villages, themselves monitored all these arrangements. This was the first conference of its kind in this forest region. In Chandrapur, too, there was a lot of enthusiasm regarding this conference. A reception committee, consisting of 45 to 50 members, including non-Congress opposition politicians, social activists, advocates, and journalists from Chandrapur to Alapalli, was formed on 2 February. Some members of the committee voluntarily offered their vehicles, houses, and time, too, for the sake of the arrangements for the conference. Some members of the committee worked round the clock to make the conference a success. In fact, it could be said that this has been the first major movement in Maharashtra after the Worli peasant struggle in the 1940s in Thane district in the west coast of Maharashtra. Background. Kamalapur is a village in the Gadchiroli district on the far eastern side of Maharashtra. Gadchiroli has borders with Bastar of Madhya Pradesh in the east and Adilabad in Karimnagar districts in Andhra Pradesh on the west and south, respectively. The district has 73% of thick forests. This forest belt, that spreads from central India to Bengal, has plenty of forest wealth, including teak, bamboo, mahua, tendu leaves, and resin. The district is very thinly populated, and half of them are Adivasis. Among the Adivasis, Raj Gons, Pradhan Gons, and Maurya Gons are predominant. Until 1751, when the Bhosles of Nagpur defeated the Gond king, this region was a part of the Chanda Godwana kingdom. Since the British rule, most of this forest region remained under the Zamindars and Malguzars. The forest is very rich, but the people are very poor. With the area under the landlords, the people did not have access to and were alienated in their own forest. From 1951, the government started acquiring forests from the landlords and categorized them into protected and reserved forests. Later, the government started a systematic exploitation of the forests in a big way for commercial purposes. The slogan of the nationalization of forests to protect the forest wealth and to prevent the indiscriminate felling of trees was only a facade to acquire forests and use them for commercial purposes. According to the estimates of the Maharashtra Forest Department, in 1981 to 82 alone, the wealth exploited from these forests was 13 crore rupees. In 1982, in Chunda Circle alone, the government earned 11 crore rupees from the sale of tendu leaves. These estimates do not include the legal and illegal profits of the forest officials and the contractors. These figures pertain to the supply of bamboo on subsidized rates to the paper industry of the Birlas and the Tapars in Sirpur and Balarshah alone. The forest laws and policies that the government enacted after acquiring the forests have been obstacles to the forest dwellers. These children of the forest have been living here since the time of their ancestors and have an emotional bonding with the forest. Now, they have become encroachers in the eyes of the government and the administration. Thus, the kings of the forest have become slaves, while the traders, contractors, and the forest guards have become the rulers of the forest. These rulers think that the Adivasis are merely cheap and readily available labor. The area is suffering from several issues like land alienation and indebtedness. Most of the forest dwellers are dependent on agriculture for their livelihood. Among the working population, 51% are agriculturalists and 34% agricultural laborers. Among the Adivasis, 91% depend on agriculture. In the remote Bamragar area, Maria Gons still practice shifting cultivation, called ponda in this area. Several Adivasis lead a miserable life, depending on 5 acres or less of uncultivable land, relying on one rainy season in a year. This district has 4 major rivers around it, and one small river flows across. But agriculture is minimal. After the monsoon crops, several people start collecting and selling minor forest produce or work in the forest development department. They are continuously cheated because of their alienation and innocence and are forced to offer bribes to obtain work in construction activity. Police and forest guards harass them when they bring wood to build their huts or brew mahua liquor, or even when they conserve their culture. Mamuls and bribes have become common in their lives. They are quite often herded to work for government and forest department officials without any wage. Traders cheat them in various ways. In one word, the civilized do not have the habit of treating the Adivasis as fellow civilized or even as human beings. Beginning the movement. The movement that began 3 years ago for land, higher wages, and self-respect has suddenly shaken the forests. The people who did not have any relation with any political party or trade union have now become conscious. The last major revolt in the area, a Gond rebellion, was led by the local zamindar Babu Rao Raj Gond in 1857 against the British. Despite the camps of the Special Reserve Police and attacks by the police, this movement, beginning in small waves, has now spread as far as Asareli, at the southern tip of the district. Even before it took the shape of an organization, and even before any demands were voiced, the movement had its first martyr. Peddi Shankar was killed on 2 November 1980 in Moinmanpet, a village on the banks of the Pranahita, in the first encounter by Maharashtra police. With this murder, the police thought that the Naxalites would be afraid to enter Maharashtra and their relations with the people would be curtailed. However, repression only led to resistance, as Peddi Shankar's death inspired the forest dwellers to organize themselves. Land struggle. This movement began around the land question, which is the major concern of the forest dwellers in this area. After the acquisition of the forests by the government, the people lost all opportunities to develop their own agricultural lands. Besides, the government has confiscated the lands of some Adivasis on the pretext that they lay within the forest area. The old custom of felling trees to cultivate land has now become illegal. But the economic backwardness, less land being available for agriculture, and land being the only source of livelihood, have meant that the peasants' demand for land has been growing. Some peasants started clearing the forest and cultivating land either legally or illegally. However, they would not get land rights even after years of cultivation. They were in constant fear and used to pay bribes to revenue and forest officials for regularizing the land rights. The people's struggle began with a popular collective action in October 1981, when the villagers of Karjeli cultivated a few acres of forest land. In March 1982, 106 landless laborers of Asareli began cultivating 13 to 14 acres of forest land. All of them were arrested and their land was taken back. On the whole, there are thousands of Adivasi and non-Adivasi peasants, landless, and those with less land but no legal right. With these mass struggles, the land issue has come on to the forefront of the agenda. Tendu leaf struggles. With the onset of the struggle, a police camp was set up in Asareli. However, this camp could not prevent the demand for higher wages for picking tendu leaves in the summer. Landless people in this area engaged themselves in the picking of tendu leaves for 1 month during the summer as a means of earning their livelihood. The tendu leaf picking having been nationalized, the Forest Department auctions the collection rights to agents who have to pay the royalty fixed for 1,000 bundles of 75 leaves each. The state government fixes the wage rate for picking the leaves. The contractors and agents appoint kalidars in the villages to collect the leaf bundles picked by people. There are many ways to cheat and exploit the villagers in this activity. First of all, the wage rate fixed by the government for picking the leaf is very low. 3 years ago, it was 4 rupees per 100 bundles, and last year it was revised to become 6 rupees 40. Secondly, the contractors demand some bundles as pasturi, free of charge. The villagers, thus, had to give at least 5 bundles for every 100 without any wage. During the summer of 1982, the villagers of Asareli demanded higher wages. The contractors accepted, and the rate was fixed at the range of 8 to 10 rupees. This rate, achieved by the struggle, was almost double the amount of that decided by the government. The news spread like wildfire. During the next season, a demand for 14 rupees for 100 bundles was proposed in the whole of Aheri and Sironcha talukas. Wherever the contractors did not accept this demand, the villagers stopped work. In Kamalapur, the contractors were intimidated when the people struck work for 8 days. Those contractors that did not accept the demand lost heavily. In the villages around Asareli, the rate was 12 rupees 50. Going further north, the rate was 9 to 10 rupees. Even the pasturi bundles have come down to 1 or 2 per 100. This victory inspired the people, who were, until then, diffident, like a wave. With this tendu leaf struggle in the summer of 1983, the movement became open. Other demands. Even as the people started making other demands, the wage rates of the Forest Development Corporation were raised. With the struggles, agricultural wage rates have gone up. The wage rate for cutting bamboo for the Balalpur paper mills has been increased. The unpaid labor, under the coercion of the police and the officials, has been reduced. Most importantly, the people's self-confidence and courage has grown so much that it has become difficult to insult their customs and culture. A naib Tahsildar was openly beaten up by the people in Ettapalli market for raping a tribal girl. The movement has gradually spread from the southern part of Asareli to Aheri, Bamragar, and Ettapalli forests. Despite several police camps, regular police attacks, and combing operations, the fact that not even a single activist has been arrested shows that the struggle has spread widely with mass support. This movement has, naturally, created fear among the landlords and contractors, who have started bringing pressure upon the government to suppress the Naxalites. An Adivasi minister in the state cabinet threatened that he would come to the district and root out the Naxalites within 15 days. An empty threat, since he has not dared to go to the district until now. The politicians are alarmed and anxious that they are losing their bastions of votes. On the walls in Chandrapur, one finds an old slogan, Adivasiyo Nagpur Chalo, Adivasis Rally to Nagpur, that was written some 15 years ago. Now, overshadowing that slogan, one can find other, bigger slogans, Chalo Kamalapur. This is a sign of the rising consciousness that is driving the Adivasis away from the bourgeois politics towards a revolutionary politics. It was Raja Vishweshwar Rao who took the Adivasis to Nagpur with the demand for a separate Vidarbha. Later, the Adivasi Congress I MLA, Baburao Madhavi, took the Adivasis to Nagpur in 1981 with the demand to change relations in the scheduled areas. Now, realizing they had not done anything for the Adivasis, and as the latter themselves are getting organized, the bourgeois politicians are feeling threatened. Police repression. About 62 state reserve police camps have been set up in many villages in the 3 talukas. Village sarpanches are being detained and tortured. They are being accused of giving shelter to dangerous criminals. En masse arrests of villagers have become very common. There are combing operations being carried out everywhere. Police surveillance in the area has increased with the announcement of the Kamalapur conference. People's committees. In spite of such heavy repression, the movement advanced in leaps and bounds. Last year, the people's committees were organized in the villages to settle various problems. In Ter village, the committee unearthed hoarded ration sugar. In a village near Sironcha, the people demonstrated, demanding the appointment of a teacher in the local school. These committees have started acting as the first step towards the exercise of people's power. Repression of the conference. The organization of the conference was an expression of the heights that the movement had reached to. Local level struggles had led to the formation of local committees. The conference inspired an enthusiasm among the people that was beyond expectations. It had been initially estimated that 8 to 10,000 people would participate in the conference. But if the police had not obstructed several people from attending the conference, at least 20,000 would have come to Kamalapur. The conference thus became a challenge to the local oppressors and created fear in the government. The state government, by using the police, applied a two-pronged strategy. First, it threatened that the conference would be banned. Rumor had it that if the people assembled for the meeting, it would become another Indraveli. Posters of the conference, pasted by the villagers, were removed. The whole atmosphere was filled with terror. A month before the conference, all the males in Kamalapur were arrested and sent to the Chandrapur jail. The necessary permission to use loudspeakers was neither given nor rejected. The police spread the story that hundreds of Naxalites from across the border were coming to attend the meeting, but nothing happened for several days. The meeting dais was constructed in Kamalapur on a large scale. In spite of all the threats, the people came forward to work. Abruptly and unannounced, from 21 February onwards, the arrests began. First, the revolutionary poet Gadar and 10 members of the Jana Natya Mandali were arrested in Aheri. Ganji Ramarao, President, AP Retu Kuli Sangam, Ragavaulu, Secretary, Girijana Retu Kuli Sangam, Datta Pandre, a volunteer in the reception committee, Shekhar, Secretary, Reception Committee, were arrested the next day. 4 members of the Avhan Natya Manch were arrested after a performance in Balasha, on their way to Kamalapur. Eknath Salve, president of the reception committee, was arrested on 23 February and moved from one police station to the next for 1 week. Prohibitory orders were imposed around Kamalapur. All the rice collected for the conference was seized. The half-built stage was razed to the ground. A truck carrying an electric generator was confiscated. A number of books being brought for sales at the conference by the Peace Book Center were taken away, and those bringing the books were arrested. Krishna Reddy, an advocate and reception committee member who was accompanying the books, was also arrested. On the evening of 24 February, Varavara Rao and some others were arrested at the Sironcha bus stand. They were handcuffed and taken to court. When they were released on the 27th, the police tried to arrest them again. However, the magistrate did not allow it. The entire area between Chandrapur and Sironcha was turned into a police camp. Armed policemen were posted at every bus stop. Each and every bus was searched, and all those going to Kamalapur were asked to get down and thrown into police vans. On the 25th and part of the 26th, buses between Alapalli and Sironcha were not allowed to ply. Even when buses were allowed, they were instructed not to stop at Repanpalli, the only access point to the meeting place. Thus, the police successfully stopped all the people entering the conference place. During those days, it was only the police vans and motorbikes that were visible in Alapalli and Sironcha. 2 Special Reserve police squads were posted to scuttle the conference. Even police from neighboring districts were deployed. Special police from neighboring states were brought to keep a watch on the visitors and to interrogate the arrested. To supervise the entire operation, the DIG himself camped at Kamalapur along with his armed squad. There was no relief from the repression even after the conference dates. All those arrested earlier were arrested again as a precautionary measure. Eknath Salve, Ganji Ramarao, Gaddar, the JNM members, Raghavulu, Datta Pandre, Sekhar, Krishna Reddy, and others were arrested again. They were charged with the ridiculous allegation of stealing and selling timber in Kamalapur. Gajanan Kalakshupavar, a youth of Asareli, was arrested again and kept in police custody. Krishna Reddy was threatened that he would be killed in an encounter since he was accused in a murder case and absconding. He was taken into the forest in a jeep at midnight and threatened. About 100 Adivasis were also arrested on their way to Kamalapur. On the whole, about 300 people were arrested twice. People's response. Although there was such a heavy onslaught, thousands of people, including the Adivasis, tried to reach Kamalapur. Some of them were arrested while attempting to reach the conference venue. Students and youth activists from Bombay, Amravati, Nagpur, and Adilabad were arrested en route. RSU students from Telangana, demonstrating in Chandrapur against police atrocities, were arrested. Forest dwellers from all corners of the district and from Bastar tried to come to Kamalapur in processions inside the forest and attempted to hold the conference. About 5,000 tribals from Madhya Pradesh, now Chhattisgarh, borders, wanted to come to Kamalapur on foot. After realizing that the police were obstructing the way, they hid themselves in the forest and held a meeting there itself. They decided to start their journey the next morning. They brought a Sanjay Vichar Manch leader to the forest and, keeping him in front, they formed a mile-long procession and reached Kamalapur by the 26th afternoon. The police were totally unnerved. They told the shocked police officer, quote, "Take us wherever you want. Delhi police station, Nagpur police station, Aheri station. We will walk. We already walked for 3 days. We will walk for another week. We came for justice. We came for our rights. We came for land rights. When we came to your office 2 years ago, you promised us land rights in 2 months. Now we are not going to trust you. We will not leave this place." End quote. After a lot of negotiations, half of them left. But the remaining half refused to budge and stayed back in the village, even as a team of documentary makers arrived there. Even though there was a lot of repression, and the meeting was banned, several tribals waited to see what would happen. Only after a police lathi charge were they dispersed. But this was only one of the many processions. Similar smaller and bigger rallies from various places in 3 talukas had arrived. A number of similar meetings were also held by the people within the forest. Students and activists arrested in Alapali addressed the people who had gathered around, from the police van itself. The conference could not be held, but the inspiration of the conference was much more than expected and strengthened the idea of resisting repression. Many of those arrested were sent to Chandrapur and Nagpur jails. More than 100 students, volunteers, and Adivasis, detained in jails, held their own 2-day conference in the jail itself. For the first time, the Nagpur jail reverberated with revolutionary slogans and songs. The jail meeting passed resolutions on various regional, national, and international issues, for instance, condemning the repression on Adivasis and peasants in Gadchiroli and Oraon, and demanding the removal of police camps from Telangana and Gadchiroli. On the outside, too, there were several protest rallies. 100 people took out a rally condemning the arrests and prohibiting the 25 February conference. Now Jawan Bharat Sabha and Vidyarthi Pragati Sangathan held a rally with 200 people in Bombay against the repression. Although the conference could not be held, the people were charged up with anger against the police actions. The police conspiracy to suppress the conference could not succeed, nor could their attempt to isolate the Adivasis and the activists. The efforts of the Adivasis to organize themselves received wider sympathy and support. The police tried to terrorize the Adivasis into leaving the Sangathan, but the attempt failed. On the contrary, the Adivasis were emboldened and said, quote, "Come what may, we will hold our conference," end quote. In the meanwhile, the Tendu leaf-picking season starts next month, and the forest dwellers are gearing up for a second round of struggle. A revolutionary dawn is aglow in Maharashtra, and, naturally, the light is spreading from the east.